Hello friends, you welcome to my complete Java course. This video is the continuation of my previous video lecture. So in these videos we are learning the polymorphism in Java. In the previous video we learned the compile time polymorphism or method overloading. In today's video lecture we are going to learn dynamic polymorphism. So let's start. Dynamic polymorphism or runtime polymorphism or method overriding in Java. Runtime polymorphism or dynamic method dispatch is a process in which a call to an overridden method is resolved at runtime rather than compile time. In this process, an overridden method is called through the reference variable of a superclass. Okay, so let's understand what is the compile time and what is the runtime. So basically the compile time polymorphism or we have a look the example of compile time polymorphism is method overloading. So in the method overloading, when we compile the program, listen carefully, when we compile the program, at the time of the compilation, it is decided that which class object, whether parent class object, because method overloading is performed in a single class. So which class object will call which method, this is decided at the compile time. But in the runtime polymorphism, which object means parent class object or child class object, by which class of object method will be called, because in the runtime polymorphism method overriding concept comes. Method overriding means you define a method in the parent class and the same method you define in the child class, and you can change the body of the methods in the child class. So this is decided at the runtime whether you will call the methods of these classes by the help of parent class object or child class object. So in the runtime polymorphism, we call the overridden method. Overridden method means subclass method by using the reference variable of the parent class and object of the subclass. Let's first understand the upcasting before runtime polymorphism. Upcasting: if the reference variable of a parent class refer to the object of the child class, it is known as the upcasting. For example, object class and reference variable of parent class. Means reference variable you create of a parent class. Suppose when you create the object, how do you create the object? You create, suppose you define a class A, then you create the object A equal to new A. Let's say show you. Wait a 1 minute. So actually when you create the object, suppose you have a class A and B, and if you are creating the object A equal to new A. Okay, so this is the reference variable. A is a reference variable and type of A is a type. Okay, and this is the object of A type. But upcasting means, suppose there is a two class, A class and B class. A is the parent class and B is the child class. And if you create A equal to new B, so the meaning is that you are passing the reference of the subclass into the, you are passing the object of a B class, you are passing the object of B class into the reference of A class. This is possible, or this is called the upcasting. Means you can pass the object of subclass to the parent class, but the reverse is not possible. If you try to B equal to new A. If A is the parent class, then it will throw the exception. So you cannot pass the parent class object to the subclass reference, but you can pass the subclass object to the parent class reference variable. Okay. So here you can see class A you have defined and class B extends class A. So class A is the parent class. So if you create the object like this, that A equal to new B means passing the B class object to the A reference. This is called upcasting. For upcasting, we can use the reference variable of class type or an interface type. Means we can define a reference variable as a interface or class as well. Suppose we define an interface and a class, and class B extends class A and implements I. So the reference variable we can create the I, like you can create the I equal to new B. That is also fine. This is also called the upcasting. Okay. Now, example of Java runtime polymorphism. In this example, we are creating two classes, bike and the splendor. Splendor is the model of a bike. Okay, so splendor class extends bike class and overrides its run method. We are calling the run method by the reference variable of parent class since it refers to the subclass object and subclass method overrides the parent class method. The subclass method is invoked at runtime. Okay, so whether you are accessing the run method of a subclass by the help of the reference variable of the parent class, but which method will be executed? Subclass method will be executed because the object is the subclass object. Okay, since method invocation is determined by the JVM, not compiler, it is known as runtime polymorphism. So in the runtime polymorphism, which method will be called? Subclass method or parent class method, or the uh, which object it is calling by the subclass object or by the parent class object. It is decided by the JVM, not the compiler. That is why it is called the runtime polymorphism, because JVM concept come at the runtime. So let's see, here we have created a bike and splendor class. Here we create a bike class and define a run method, and we are printing the running. Okay, and in the splendor class we extend the bike class and define the override the run method. Overriding means just same to same, there is no changes within the parameters. Parameter also cannot be changed in the overriding method. It should be same, otherwise it is not be called the overridden method. So we create the overridden method, and now we create a bike class reference variable and splendor class object and call the run method. So what do you think, which method will be called? Because reference variable is bike type and object is a splendor type. So if you are thinking it will call the bike class method, no, you are wrong. It will call the subclass method because the object is present in the B is the splendor type. Okay, so let's I show you this example on Eclipse IDE. Okay, now you can see I have created one bike class and define a run method, and this run method I have overridden in the Splinter class. Overridden method means just write a same method as the parent class method and you can provide the different body. Okay, now if I call the run method on the reference of bike, then it will call the subclass method. So you will get the output Splendor running because it is calling the run method of the Splendor class. So at what time run method is decided that which run method will be called, parent class run method or the child class run method. It is decided at the runtime, not the compile time. When you compile, it is not decided which method will be called. When you run this program, then it is decided that subclass run method will be executed. So it is called the runtime polymorphism. But for the runtime polymorphism, there is need two classes, and that classes have the parent and child relationship. But for the compile time polymorphism or method overloading, there is no need for two class. The method overloading happened only the one class. Okay, now understand the next points regarding the method overriding. Okay, now the other example, Java runtime polymorphism, an example of bank. Consider a scenario where bank is a class that provides a method to get rate of interest. However, the rate of interest may differ according to bank. For example, SBI, ICICI and Axis banks are providing at 0.4%, 7.3% and 9.7% interest rate of interest. Okay, so this is a chart. So here bank have a one method, get rate of interest, and return type is float. And SBI override this method, ICI also override this method, and Axis Bank also override this method. But the return type means the value of the return which it will be written by the SBI get rate of interest method, and ICI's method and Axis Bank method will be different. Okay, so let's see an example. We create a bank class and define a get rate of interest method which is returning 0, means nothing. Class SBI action the bank class. Again we override this method, and now this method is returning a different value. Again ICICI Bank action the bank and it is returning 7.3x which is different from the SBI Bank. Again we define a Axis Bank and define the method, and it is returning a different value. So now the concept of polymorphism comes. So we define a test polymorphism class, main method. Now we create a bank class reference, bank class reference. Okay, in this bank class reference, we can pass the object of SBI class. If we pass the SBI class object and call the get rate of interest method, then the SBI class get interest of method will be executed. If we pass the ICIC methods, ICICI type of object in the reference of B, and if we try to call the get rate of interest method with this reference, then we are able to call the get rate of interest method of the ICICI Bank. And if we call the Axis Bank method, then we execute the get rate of interest of the Axis Bank. If you run this program, you will get the output of the all three classes or all the three bank interest rates. So let's I show you this example on the Eclipse IDE. Okay friends, so now I have copied the code from this slide. So here we create a one bank class with get interest of rate method, SBI class, ICIC class and Access class, and all these three classes we are overriding the get interest of rate method, and now we are creating a reference of bank class and passing the object of SBI class, calling the get interest of rate method, and ICICI object in the reference of bank class. So what is the object is in the reference of bank class, that method will be executed. So if you run this program, okay, we have to be define the SISO statement. Okay, now run it. Okay, now you will get the output 8.4, 7.3 and 9.7. So this is the example of runtime polymorphism. Okay, now I would like to show you one thing more. Okay, what happened if you define a like first we comment this all. Okay, now if you pass the in the B, if you pass the only the bank object in the reference of bank, and now you call the B dot get rate of interest. Okay, now if you run it, 0.0 means parent class method is executing. Okay, now what happened? Now if you are thinking that why I am calling this, uh, why I am passing the SVI object into the bank object, why I am not directly creating the object, means why I am not defining this like, let's see what is saying that it will throw the error. Okay, okay, now if you run it, so you will get the output, you will get the output of the child class, or you can easily call the subclass or SBI class methods, which also you are calling at the earlier by using the reference variable of the parent class or the bank class. But you don't do that, because polymorphism, runtime polymorphism concept says that you always use the reference of the parent class and pass the object of your class into this parent class and call the method. So you are easily call the subclass method. So you should always follow the polymorphism concept when you are calling the overridden method. Whether you can call by the creating the subclass object, but that approach is not recommended.